All right, so this is flare up, right? Flare to handstand. Flare to handstand, flare to 90, flare to air track. And I'm sorry about the exposure on this, it's so dark, but that is what my iPhone had at the time. So flare going up, and I have it from different angles too. So let's talk about just this flare, right? So I slow it down and I'm doing flare, same thing as always, but, and there's really actually no difference. Like you keep this leg high, toes are pointing in the back. You're gonna do that same foot rotation. So instead of pointing back, it's gonna like rotate around and face the front. And this is like for your toes. While this leg sweeps back and around. But instead of this leg sweeping back and around, it's gonna swing back, around, and then up. So it's gonna land more like up here, if that makes sense. Let me see. That was way off, but we end up back here. So the two things that are gonna get you up in a, from a flare into handstand is gonna be this leg really pulling, so that top leg really pulling when you make that L, or when you start to make that L, and then this leg pulling all the way around in a circular motion and then coming straight up. And it's not gonna be like a straight up motion, but you're gonna be rotating around. As you pull it around, it's gonna end somewhere up here. So this leg remains high and is rotating still. Notice my toe is starting to point more forward right here. So now my toes are pointed towards the camera, and this leg is gonna pick up. I'll draw it out here. And this leg is gonna start to pick up. Oops. To handstand. So the most important thing for this transition really is making sure you have a really good L. And then once you can sit in a really good L, I'll keep letting it play through. Once you can sit in a really good L position on the side, that's when you really have control to pull up. Another thing for going up from flare, and I'll just wait for the next clip, is that all the pulling up you should be doing is with one hand. And I'll show you guys what I mean. So all my pulling up is done on this hand right here. I only place this hand back down when I'm all the way up. So I'm doing it. I do all the pulling up. Notice this leg is pulled in an L shape, or I'm making my L shape right here. This leg is pulled up as high as I can. Toes rotating. And this leg coming back and up. By the time I'm up in the handstand, right when my finger touches the ground, I'm already all the way up in a handstand position. All this arm does, that's the free hand does, is catch you in position once you're all the way up. And I'll wait for the next clip. All right, so next clip. All the picking up is done on the second hand right here. Everything picking up, picking up, picking up. I'm placing it down once I'm already all the way up, if that makes sense. But really, when you look at flare transitions, flares going up, really look at the L's. If you can get a clean L, you're gonna get not just a clean V, but you'll also be able to go up. So here, make the V, now make an L to go back, pick up. So also for this, notice I'm like with all my weight on my hand as I'm rotating back, I'm leaning all my weight on this arm right here. Oops. And I'm rotating from my shoulder and I'm kind of like leaning. So basically like I'm pulling it back, and essentially I could flare from here, right? I could be in this position and flare. And this is when I really like lean forward. So like, I don't know how to draw this, but I would be leaning forward, or I guess to pull into handstand. So I'd be leaning my hips. I would be leaning my hips forward to get into that handstand. So not only leaning my hips, but also like really flexing, kind of like when we do tuck planche, or if we do like L sit, we're really like curling up and really like pulling, using the arms to pull. It's going to be like kind of like the same concept, not exactly the same, but yeah. Let's see if there's any other examples I have in here. All the picking up is done on this arm. All my weights, I'm using this arm right here, making this L, toes are pointing back. Going to do that foot rotation to keep that leg up. Now it's pointing forward. And now I'm starting to lean towards my shoulder as I'm in the back. So basically when I'm doing the flare, treat everything like normal. Everything is like normal. As soon as I get to the back where I would normally put this hand down fast, that's when I start to lean forward. So not only am I leaning forward and putting more pressure on the shoulder, but then I'm also like starting to lean forward with my hips as I bring my legs around. So it's kind of like leaning with a rotation at the same time. So now here, I'm leaning more with my hips more and more the higher up I go. So I'm using my shoulder to lift me up as well as my hips. And then not only that, I'm also using that kicking leg coming up. And I guess the better view is from the back, but let's see what other views we have. So flare, another view from the back. Arm shoulder width apart, make the V, make the L, keep that top leg up as high as you can. All right, yeah, so this is a good example. All right, so pull this leg up. So from here, again, all my weight's being pulled on this arm. I'm gonna start leaning forward on the shoulder once I get a little bit higher, but notice as this leg comes around, it's gonna pick all the way up. And this pickup on top of using my shoulder and then leaning forward, I don't know how to draw it, but leaning forward with my hips, these are the things that are gonna help me. So you have your, I can't believe I'm writing this out like this. Your hips leaning, and then your shoulder, and then this back leg that's kicking back. So these are the three main things that are really going to propel you to go up. Yeah, so you have your shoulder, that I just switched arms, this leg that just followed this trajectory, and then leaning back with those hips once I get into like more of a planche-like position. Leaning on that shoulder, kicking that leg back. Once I'm in a planche-like position, I start to lean back with those hips. And then notice every time, and it doesn't really matter what angle, but every time I get into handstand, for all of these attempts, I'm maintaining this angle between my legs and my body. If as soon as I compromise it and it starts becoming a wider angle, that's when I start like losing balance in my transition. So that's a really important note to keep in mind. Again, so this same angle with your body, between your legs and your body, you always want to keep that angle in this transition. As soon as I come up, keeping this power angle, right? Keeping those legs flexed just like they were the same angle you would have in a flare. Same thing with the next attempt, picking up. As soon as I pick up, I keep that same angle between my legs and my upper body. So yeah, the biggest thing is people, the biggest thing I see when people try to transition up from flare is that they try to pick up with both hands. Like they'll get to the back of the flare, put their hand down at this point right here, and then try and just pick up their hips like from a planche. And that's really, I mean, it can work, but as far as like smooth power transitions, like you really want to pick up with just the opposite hand. So I'm picking up with just this hand only. Everything is done here. And the only thing I'm doing with this hand is placing it down to balance myself after I pick up. So we went over getting a single flare and then getting maybe like 2 or 3 like multiple flares, cleaning up multiples, and then now flare, transitioning up to handstand. And then we'll go over handstand into flare, which I don't have footage of myself. So I'll probably just use this paired with the other flare video. All right, so let's go ahead and move on. So I can use actually some of these. So let's say you're in a handstand like this right here in this position. So like I mentioned before, you want to keep this angle, right? This angle right here is the same angle you're going to be at for flare. It's just, you're just opening out the shoulders instead of having them like closed in. So instead of having your shoulders closed in like this, your shoulders are going to be open, but the angle is the same. With that being said, it's really hard to explain this without footage of it, but with this angle right here, I guess I'll just use this. With this angle right here between your leg and your body, you're going to want to keep this leg high, and this is going to be an I flare going around this way, clockwise. So this back leg would be the leg that would be, I guess, if I were to start flare, the one I would start kicking with, right? And this one that with the big dot is the one that I have jumping up, like initially, right? So basically, like, how can I get this leg, how can I get this leg right here with the big dot into, how can I get it into this position? So how can I go from being in a handstand with my leg up here, and let's say like this is my foot, into this position right here with my hips down. So like, I'll just draw it out. So if my legs were like this in handstand and my hips were like down low, like how do I go from here into here? So like the hips are going to drop anyways. This is a really bad, guys, this is a really bad diagram. I'm sorry. But your hips are going to drop anyways, right? And it looks like I'm pointing it towards my PP. So hips are going to drop. And now this leg, the toes, when you're in handstand, are pointing down or like slightly forward. And now you have to do that same rotation with your leg to pick it up, to get into this position right here. So basically, like, you're going to rely on this leg, or I guess in this case, this leg right here, that same start leg, heavily. And that's going to launch you. This leg right here. So the leg that jumps up. And actually, I think I could just do it from here, actually. So this jumping leg right here, this is the one we're going to heavily rely on for transitioning into flare. And I think, let's say, yeah, okay, perfect. Let's say this is our handstand, right? I should have just used this from the beginning. Let's say this is our handstand. In our handstand, our shoulders would be extended more instead of like bent. So currently our shoulders are kind of probably at like this angle, but in handstand, they would probably be at a wider angle. Doesn't really matter. The point is getting this leg to that front, to this position right here, right? So notice when I'm back in the back of a flare, oh my gosh, all right. So notice when I'm in the back of a flare, it's really similar, and at least in this video, it's really similar to handstand. Like your feet are pointing forward, and I think in this one, when I'm in handstand, my feet are more or less pointing down, and as soon as I'm getting ready, going down to flare, as soon as I bring my hips down to flare, these toes are going to start pointing forward. And basically the goal is to get this leg, as you bring the hips down, down to like this position right here, this position. So this is going to be your guide. So if you can get to this position, you're already good. And now one of the issues you're going to run into going from handstand going down to flare is that this leg will have a harder time kicking because you're bringing all the way from handstand right here. You're going to have to rotate it all the way around and bring it low and then kick it up over here. So sorry, this is like really like a lot to explain conceptually without like an example of it, but yeah, this is the best I can do. But yeah, this leg, if this leg falls as you do it, it's perfectly normal. The most important thing is keeping this leg like high, because as soon as this leg falls from handstand to flare, it's done. This leg can scrape and still make it by. I guess, yeah, it's more or less the same. So from this position right here, this leg will be your guiding leg. So from handstand, if you can get your leg into this position, and then your other leg that kicks around towards the front, and then this leg. So basically, if you can lock this leg in place, then you can worry about really kicking this front leg as hard as you can into continuing flare. So that would be the two main points. If I were to come out with two main points, if you have handstand and flare and you're trying to get it, the two main points I would say would be ensuring that this leg, as you come around front, this leg gets to the position where it needs to be, like all the way up here. And then at the same time, once you get used to consistently locking this leg in position for your flare, then really putting that power in this back leg, and that's a really bad arrow, really putting power in this back leg to get you all the way around. So getting this leg where it needs to be, and then really putting in the power in that leg that's going to sweep out first. So those would be the two things. So yeah, I hope that helps. Yeah, those are like the two major things. Most people that try handstand to flare that already have a good understanding of flare and handstand, those are really like the two fundamental things that really, like, once it clicks for you or once you practice it and it works, you'll get it in no time. So really getting that leg, that leading leg, that first one, or the one you'll be jumping with normally into that position. I can't even see myself. Getting it into that position, and then really once you get used to getting it into that position, then really kicking it out, the other one. So yeah, let's see. So here, getting into that position right here, and then this one. So I would say work on it in two parts. So if you have handstand and flare and you don't have handstand flare, first and foremost, work on getting your that main leg here consistently. Even if this leg like taps the ground, drags, or falls or whatever, doesn't matter. Just like when you're learning one flare or trying to get multiple flares and you land on the side, do that. That's perfectly fine. As long as you get used to going from handstand, like your legs, I don't even know how to explain it. Like having your legs out like this in handstand and then letting that leg like dip down into this position right here. Just get used to that and landing, and it ends up like this. Perfectly fine. As long as you get your leg up at this angle and get used to having it here, then once you get it consistently here, then worry about this back leg kicking to the front, if that makes sense. So first, worry about getting that leg up consistently. So from handstand going down, scooping, getting to this position right here, first and foremost. Once you can always get into that position, even if this leg falls, it's perfectly fine. Then once you're consistent, work on kicking that all the way around to the front and getting handstand to flare.